Alright, what is going on, guys? This will be my first live stream in probably a year, maybe even longer than that, to be honest. It's been a while since I have committed to any form of streaming. Really, content making in general, even. I've posted a few videos over the past year, mostly just showing clips, fights of some of the more interesting bosses that I've fought, and just more notable shit like that, and even just occasional other fights or things like that that I wanted to make saves of, so I could go back and look at them and shit. But for the most part, you know, I haven't really been producing videos anymore, or content in any form, at least in this capacity when it comes to gaming. I've focused more on other things, I would say, because, you know, I definitely made a lot more content when I was younger, out of love for the craft, but also because it was just, like, such an inspirational thing for me as a kid, like, being a content creator, or specifically a YouTuber. But, you know, I don't have that same drive, because I know I'm not gonna get big anymore, or anything like that. So once it became like only doing it for passion and it started to die down, I kind of lost that passion or directed it towards other things. But we are back now because I figured I would rather go ahead and stream a little bit of some Elden Ring than play it while I watch the shit in the background. I'm on the PS4 edition of the game at the moment, which I've already got the platinum for. I am currently sitting at like 776 hours on the PS4 edition. And my goal is to get that number up a little bit, past, I think it's 1,013 hours, because I want Elden Ring to be my second most played game behind Minecraft. I am very ashamed of what the number 2 spot is. Not really. Not really. I played it a shit ton when I was younger because I could play it by myself or in Phil or with friends or whatever, so I wouldn't actually say I'm ashamed. But I'm definitely not honored to know that it's my number 2 most played game on the console. So I would definitely love to push Elden Ring up to that spot. I'm also working on trying to platinum Elden Ring on the PS5 at the moment. So we're gonna have to beat the game 3 more times at least on the 5. And while I'm working on that, I don't want to forget about my objective of getting this past 1,000 hours. Let's go ahead and start ranking. We're already at a boss fight. So, Mad Pumpkinhead duo. We've got a Hammer variant and a blue. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like the Mad Pumpkinhead. They're an okay enemy, like they're not a bad enemy whenever you're exploring castles and shit. But on their own, they're not the most interesting boss. There's one fight earlier on in the game, I want to say it's the Witchbane Ruins or something like that. Or, it's like the first ruin that you find, or second ruin that you find rather, in you find Cell and the Witch behind it. You just have to fight one. Here you have to fight 2 of them with they've got fire on their weapons and shit, the Scarlet Blotto Day. That's a nice touch, but other than that, it's just 2 decent enemies that have been crammed into a room together and use the boss health bar. They don't really complement each other or anything like that, they're kind of just trash. Let's go ahead and blow them up. If I had to rank them, these here, pretty much garbage. I remember they took them out on one of my playthroughs because I was determined to get my runes back after I died in here. I think it was actually my magic playthrough, not even gonna lie. I think it was this character whenever I was first playing through it. Because I was very weak at the start on my magic playthrough. It took a while before I really felt like I got into the rhythm of having enough strength to survive. But yeah, overall, pretty shit boss, definitely D tier, and their reward is an okay shield that I've never used once in my life, so yeah, you wouldn't really miss much if you don't come here. The ruin I was talking about is Waypoint Ruins, by the way, not Wishbane Ruins. I think that's actually the one where I was just reminiscing, or not even reminiscing, I was really pondering. Elden Ring is kind of two different games. There's Elden Ring as you first experience it, and then there's Elden Ring, like, after you've reached a point of knowing a lot of information about it. And, like, the more information that you learn or retain about Elden Ring, the more different it is from that initial experience. Like, I'm at the point now where I have fully platinumed Elden Ring. I've done every single dungeon several times, every boss several times. Like, I've done everything several times over now. And I kind of have not a picture-perfect idea of the lands between by any means. There's still things that I sometimes miss or forget about, shit like that. But I have an almost perfect memorization going on of just about where every single encounter and boss and everything like that is across the map. And so now whenever I think about Elden Ring, I think about it from that perspective of like knowing everything and shit. But I keep thinking about what it was like to first play the game, because I remember Caelid felt so different to me than it does now. Like now when I'm in Caelid, I think of Caelid as like the sum of all of its components that I know, you know, where they are and whatnot. But finding Caelid for the first time is so crazy. You just leave Limgrave, like, it's been pretty standard, solid so far, nothing too crazy. And now you're getting out here and it's like, okay, what are we gonna do now? And you're just immediately bombarded with this fucking awful, toxic environment full of strong enemies that are big and menacing. Like, it's like such a polar opposite. I remember in my first playthrough, and honestly in pretty much every single playthrough since, I have completely ignored Caelid until after I had explored and pretty much finished Liurnia. On my most recent playthrough on the PS5, I chose to do things a little bit differently, so I ended up going to Caelid first, and well, I had to go to Liurnia first to get certain items for the character, for the build that I was going to go with. But in terms of like clearing an area, after I beat a couple but not all of the dungeons in Limgrave and shit, I moved straight on to Caelid. Just to do things a little bit differently. I'm sort of trying to do everything a little bit differently in that run. Like, I'm trying to take a different order to get around. Like, I just beat the Draconic Tree Sentinel outside of Lindell, and normally I would just go through Lindell, like, you know, like you do from right there. But I think there's like a second way into Lindell that I might take before I actually explore that area. Fuck it. You know how I'm ranking bosses? Well, I'm also gonna rank dungeons at the same time. This is Jail Cave in Caelid. It's a pretty interesting one. You've got a bunch of these like fire zombies locked up in cages. You have to explore, and then to open all of the cages in order to finish the dungeon and keep exploring. You got some of these little itch guys there. They're malicious. Oh, I'm missing so much. But yeah, I like the idea of like going through the dungeon and opening all the caves and shit. Cages, sorry. That's a cool idea. That's pretty unique. This sort of like red sandstone rock cave type isn't really a texture you see too often in the cave. You know, there's not like a crazy amount of these caves. I mean, there's a few throughout Caelid, but you know, that's nice. I like the sandstone and shit. I like the gimmick of the cave. Pretty interesting. This is a cave, yeah. So there's kind of like a few different main dungeon types. You got the catacombs, you have the caves, and you have the tunnels, which are like the mines that have all the smooth stones and shit. And I would say of those, the caves, man, you're really annoying for that. The caves definitely have the most variety for what they offer. Followed by probably might be controversial, but I'm going to say the catacombs over the tunnels. The tunnels have a few unique, interesting things about them from time to time. And I'm also a little bit biased, though, because having put 700 hours into Elden Ring, and having done, like, every single dungeon over and over again, all that shit, one of the only dungeons that has become annoying to me, just, like, not fun at all, is the tunnels. I don't like whenever you go down the elevator shafts. Pretty much all the tunnels do this, and I loved it the first time I was playing the game. So that's another dichotomy between, like, your first impression and then your later impression or whatever. But the first time through, it's awesome, you know, you explore and you're like, oh shit, I can just jump off at these ledges, get smithing stones and shit. It's great, love it. In subsequent playthroughs, it feels super tedious to have to look down and check each of the ledges and try to make sure you don't miss smithing stones. And you don't have to, admittedly. You could just like let that if you're not that worried about the smithing stones. But like, you know, the smithing stones are pretty important, so I like to have as many of them as the game is going to give me. So for me at least, it is a huge pet peeve having to check all those layers each time I go down the tunnel. And that's why I'm very glad that the tunnels did not return in Shadow of the Erdtree, actually. Instead, there is a new dungeon type called Ruined Forges, and I think there's 3 of them. And not only do they look really cool, and not only are they really cool in general, but they kind of fill in for tunnels. Instead of having the tunnels, you find smithing stones inside of those places, as well as the unique new smith script weapons. So I do love the forges. They're also a more interesting, or not more interesting, I shouldn't say. They're a more unique challenge towards the player, rather than just like asking you to do like a bunch of combat or anything. Which, I mean, there is still combat. You fight these golems throughout it, but they're more of like a navigational challenge. Like, your goal isn't to fight a boss at the end, because there is no boss. Your goal is to find the actual forge itself that's inside of the dungeon and open it up for that valuable loot that might be inside or whatever. So they're just kind of nice all around. I love that they replaced tunnels. I like their atmosphere a lot. The ruined forge full of lava and shit, and the smith script weapons, the golems. Those are all really nice. I would consider those immaculate and well executed. Okay, let's get to this boss, Frenzy Duelist. Alright, so we're in a prison. There's a bunch of people locked in these cells, so it might make sense that he's down here. You know, they cast him in the bottom of the pit. The Frenzy Duelists aren't really looked upon very favorably anymore, ever since the world became more civilized, or less like order, or less chaos control. Age of the Crucible and warriors and shit that came with Godfrey. So, you know, I can see him being down here reasonably. It's not too much of a leap or a random fill, I would say, shoving this guy down here. The duelists are cool. There's a few of them that are as bosses, and there's a few variants of them as bosses and enemies throughout the game. It's an interesting moveset. It's nothing too crazy or complicated, but I do like it. Yeah, pretty solid. Ooh. Yeah, I managed to really clock me with that one. If I can, I'm gonna hit him with my bones. Yeah, he definitely has a interesting moveset. I do like it. I would say Frenzy Duelist, C tier. C tier. Not too crazy, but not too bad either. The jail cave is a fun one, though. Oh, and the jail cave is one of the few caves and tunnels and shit throughout the world that uniquely actually leads somewhere on the other side, which I always love when the caves do this. So that instantly bumps jail cave up a little bit for me. And this is the Regalia Via Cave, yeah. If I remember correctly, it's an okay sword. I never super loved it, but I thought it was kind of cool finding it here for the first time. Jail Cave, I'll give Jail Cave a solid A tier. Solid A tier. I think, Jail Cave is about what you expect or want from a cave, from your standard cave type dungeon in Elden Ring. I don't know why we're just gonna rank anything in Elden Ring. We're not even gonna rank just the bosses or anything like that. We're just gonna travel around Elden Ring and rank random shit. And that's gonna be this entire live stream, because that's content. And that's the type of content that gets you 1,000 hours in Elden Ring. And I've got 230 more to go, I think. So, you know, okay. So, I think this is, if I remember correctly. Okay, I thought I was gonna get ambushed there, but... Oh, they ambushed the bear instead, I think. Yeah, this rune bear, I pretty much never come here. I'm kind of mad that you hit me with that while I was charging up my explosion, I'm not gonna lie. Oh yeah, jump his ass. Damn it, wolves. So nobody ever taught these wolves how to jump properly. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and rank rune bears real quick. I think rune bears suck. I think they're big, they're clunky, they're annoying, I don't like their moveset. Don't like rune bears. There's honestly a good few of them throughout the game, and I think they're always more of a hassle than they are remotely worth dealing with. And I never bother dealing with them. Fucking, other than the one in the ruins in the forest that you have to, well, you don't have to kill it, you can walk right by it, but, you know, I kill that one to loot that ruin, and I fight the rune bear boss and the shit like that, but I will not be killing random stray rune bears. Don't got time for it, don't like it, never do it. So I probably have ignored this rune bear in 99% of my playthroughs. I'm sure I've killed him a few times here and there, maybe two times, 3 times I've probably killed this rune bear. But definitely not any more than that. Did I forget to... I believe there's definitely... Oh, yeah, okay. So I'm gonna have to really hike my ass back there. It's not too bad. I can start up here at the village. Yeah, do not like rune bears. I would give every rune bear a D tier. They're probably not worth being an F tier enemy, because I don't think they're that shit, and I can't appreciate their inclusion in the game at least, even if I don't really like them. But I definitely would not put them any higher than a D tier. Now, am I tripping? I think I fucked up. Did I? Nah, there's like a hill over here. Yeah, okay. Even though there's not really much exploration anymore, there's not really much of a vibe of exploration anymore with Elden Ring for me, because of how often I have gone through everything. I do still love the way the world is put together and shit. My first playthrough, I will always have, like, incredibly fond memories of as, like, my favorite playthrough of Elden Ring. But I've absolutely loved my other playthroughs as well for the most part. One day I would really like to make analysis videos on each of the FromSoft games that I personally have played and my thoughts on them. And you could argue that's oversaturated, but I mean, you could argue that about all content, especially gaming content nowadays. So I don't necessarily feel like it's that big of an issue. But these are probably my favorite games. Like, this franchise is probably my favorite game franchise. It's hard for me to put into words exactly how much it fits the perfect niche of games that I absolutely like love and adore. For my entire life, I've been an absolute fucking like obsessed individual when it comes to magic and like monsters and gods and fucking fantasy and anything else like that. Like anything in that general ballpark even sort of calls to me. But it's really hard to find good fantasy games, in my opinion, or at least I've always thought it has been. Especially like what's it called? Especially when I was younger, like I always used to be like, because I loved playing like Black Ops 3, but I was always like, damn, why is there no like fantasy equivalent of a shooter game? You know, like a game where you just fucking, and I don't even know how to really describe it better than that. Like that as a kid was like my like ponderation, my thought process on shit. But you know, as I got older, I started to play other games, but I still didn't find very many that fit what I like really craved out of games. Like that's why I managed to put so many hours in Minecraft. It's because not a lot of other games really called to me personally, to like the core of what I like out of gaming. And most of the other games that I would end up branching out into would just be like other shooter games or co-op games. Right? Shit like Splitgate and Spellbreak and Apex and Fortnite and Dead by Daylight and all these other fucking games like that. You know, they sort of became like the main games that I would end up getting when it came to new games for a long, long time. I think the first time I really like branched out and found a game that I was like, okay, wow, this is really nice, was like God of War. When God of War came out, the fourth one, or the first one in Norse mythology. I played through that one. But I was playing Skyrim. I remember this was some of the last gaming content I did for this channel actually. Back whenever I was doing my weekly Skyrim streams. It was called like Skyrim Singularity or something like that. And it would just be me running around doing quests, exploring Skyrim, sometimes just sitting there taking in the scenery and shit, you know, enjoying budding flowers, as one could say, type shit. But for the most part, it was just like, you know, vibing out playing Skyrim. And I probably did that for like 11 to 12 streams straight. Like, definitely well over like 20, 30 hours of Skyrim probably. Was, you know, having a good time doing the streams and was like working my way through platinuming Skyrim. And then I bought Bloodborne. I chose to get one of these games, but I didn't know which one I should start with. I didn't want to start with Dark Souls 1 because I, you know its reputation as being very brutal. And I'm glad I didn't, to be honest, because Dark Souls 1 is a very complicated game when it comes to navigation if you're not very familiar with that kind of game. Like, even I haven't played most of these FromSoft games. I get lost playing Dark Souls 1 whenever I play it. I'm still working my way through it at the moment. I think I'm actually heading towards Blighttown, which is particularly a worrying thought. But, and you know, I am having fun with Dark Souls 1, but I do think that it is a lot more punishing than the other games in the series. I think it's more punishing than like any of the games in the series. No fast travel, you have to really navigate around, and I think it maintains a fair level of difficulty. Not saying it's like the hardest challenge out of any of the games or whatever, or anything like that, but it is personally giving me the most trouble out of any of them that I've played. But I didn't want to start with that one. I thought about starting with Dark Souls 3, but I was like, shit, I feel like it's whack as fuck to start with the final entry in the franchise. And if I remember correctly, at the time, I want to say Bloodborne, which is a PlayStation exclusive, might have been on sale. But even if it wasn't on sale, at the time, it was definitely cheaper than Dark Souls 3. And since it was a PlayStation exclusive, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and play that one. It easily became my favorite game so quickly. Like, it took just one session, one live stream of streaming that, and the next time I went back to Skyrim, after like 10 minutes, I was so bored, I had to end stream and switch streams just to find something more interesting and like enjoy these games. And I fucking adored Bloodborne. That game, to me, is nothing less than a masterpiece, like an absolute perfect game. Any flaws that I might have towards Bloodborne are easily so drowned out by the amount of positives that I can name about it. To me, it's a flawless product. I would recommend it towards literally anyone that wanted to get into any of these games in a heartbeat. And I think it also does a really good job of training players to play FromSoft games. I think it does a better job of that than any of the other games in the series, personally. Like I never, like, the Dark Souls 3 start, I feel like, is not as all-encompassing of a good tutorial on, like, really teaching you the mechanics of these games. But I feel like Central Yharnam and both of its bosses, like, that whole area is just, like, a perfect intro to FromSoft. And I started one of my friends on Bloodborne as his first entry in any of these games. And it very quickly became one of his favorite games as well, I should say. But I definitely think that Bloodborne is just a masterpiece. But yeah, so I really love all these games. So I'd love to make video essays or analysis or ranking videos, stuff like that, just content on these games. If I had more time or more know-how on how to do so. It would be fun to sort of build back up a small community at least. I'd like to have a few viewers that like enjoy the content and come back semi-regularly if possible. But since we're ranking bosses, let's go ahead and rank the Mad Pumpkinhead on its own. We already ranked the one in K-Lid. I think we gave it a D tier. And I'm going to go ahead and give this one another D tier. Mad Pumpkinheads are an alright enemy, but they're not all that interesting when made into a boss fight. They're not all that interesting in general, really. You know, they're just kind of alright. And, yeah, this one is just here to block our access to Selling, so he's pretty much nothing more than an annoyance. Definitely gonna just go ahead and slap this with a D tier. It's not like, you know, the worst super early game. You know, if you like are just starting out and find this, it might be somewhat interesting to fight. But after having played some more stuff, I think you will sort of realize it's pretty just okay at best. It's just all around not remarkable. So I'd stick it at D tier as well. But I would stick it. I'm kind of torn because on the one hand, it's just the normal version of this fight without it being a duo fight, which FromSoft has made a shit ton of fights in this game, which are just duo fights for the sake of making the fight not identical to another one. So I'm tempted to sort of give that as more of an edge towards this one over that, but then again, at the same time, I feel like the added touch of those ones having fire on their weapons to ward off the Scarlet Rot, since they're probably like red main soldiers and shit, is just a better thematic touch for the area and shit like that. Plus, I don't know why this random Pumpkinhead is guarding this weird place where Selin was maybe trapped. I don't know if she was stuck back there or not, but yeah, I think that's just all around very, very bland. Gonna stick that into a very lame D tier. Let's see. You know, it's honestly amazing. I probably spent I must have spent at least 20 plus hours, maybe even more than that, just like exploring and enjoying Limgrave and the Weeping Peninsula whenever I first started out, because this is just such a beautiful and wonderfully crafted area. Sorry about that. I got a phone call, so I had to go around, you know, doing pretty much a whole lot of nothing for a minute while I finished up that phone call. We don't have any viewers anyway, so I figured it probably wouldn't be an issue. Probably going to end this stream sometime within the next 10 to 15 minutes as well. So we're probably just going to go ahead and kill one more boss before we end this off. which is a Geo. As a first time, or a Geo, first time coming over here, it was a kind of like a jump scare having this fucking big ass dragon pop up out of nowhere while I was approaching those guys, burn them all to shit. It's a very like ambient cinematic introduction. Like, look at this, they're performing like a ritual, a gathering. They've got someone strung up, they're burning them on a pyre, and they're gathered around, possibly waiting for a Geel's flame to come and burn them all alive. Who knows if that's why they're there or not. But, you know, I like this little setup. Look at this. Flies in out of nowhere, kills them all. And now you gotta fight a big ass fuck you dragon. First time seeing that, it's like such a crazy moment. It felt like such a wild boss that I was gonna have to really come back later at. And I did at first, you know, I had to go through some other dungeons and come back and fight him the first time I found him. But you fight so many dragons in this game that have the same moveset that, you know, as a lot of people have commented on, the dragons don't really feel as, like, crazy as the first time you see them. I do like the elemental variations of the dragons, and I personally don't hate the dragon's moveset, so I don't mind fighting multiple of them. But there are definitely a lot of these dragons throughout the game. And while they might not all be as crazy or exciting, I do still think that whenever you're playing for the first time, this will feel incredible. And whenever you encounter some of the other dragons later on through the game, they usually have enough merit where I don't think they're terribly offensive. Find a glintstone dragon, which is interesting. They have spells, the glintstone breath and all that, so I really like that. And starting a key, it's like a unique encounter, so I really don't mind that fight against, I want to say that's Smaragd. Agula is very similar, but even cooler against the big ice blade attack. So I definitely think there's enough variation to the dragons to where I don't mind them, even if they are a very recurring enemy type. I would personally give a Geo solid A tier for the first time that you find it, being such a crazy moment, the cool spectacle that they have in the setup to it, as well as the nearby, I believe they're literally called Dragon Burnt Ruins, which just adds to the atmosphere of this area even more. Like, you can tell Geo is the one that done burnt these ruins to shit, and that's a really cool touch, having them right next to it like that. So I would definitely, I'd give the Geo a solid A tier. A very solid dragon fight, very good introduction to dragon fights. And yeah, that's just a pretty standard thing overall. Limgrave as a whole, I think, has some very solid fights. And even the ones that aren't particularly crazy, like that Mad Pumpkinhead, which we gave a D tier to, aren't terribly offensive, especially not for your first time finding them, you know? But honestly, that's probably going to be it for this stream. I really just wanted to do this as a little attempt to getting back into the flow. I might make more of these, depending on whether I really enjoy streaming or whether streaming makes it easier to get those hours up, because I really do want to hit 1,000 hours, or 1,014 hours, or whatever the hell, here on Elden Ring, and that is a bit of a hard task when there's nothing left to do. Not nothing left to do, but when there's arguably more to do on the PS5 version of this game, which has a separate, you know, time tracker, than there is to do on this version of the game. But I do think this might help, so this is a fun way to sort of break back into it. Maybe I'll do more, maybe I won't, but for now I'm going to end this one off, and I'll try and see y'all next time.